The grand hall of the Alpha King's palace stretched into shadows, its high arched beams catching the flickering torchlight and casting long, wavering patterns across the polished stone floor. Every step she took echoed quietly, though she moved with practiced grace, a ghost among the powerful wolves that prowled these halls. No one could guess what she truly was, not here, not yet. She carried a tray of silver goblets, her hands steady despite the tightening in her chest. Eyes sharp and assessing followed her every movement. Whispers brushed past her like a cold wind, a reminder that appearances mattered, that even a single misstep could shatter the fragile mask she wore. "Keep your head down, stay invisible." A low, commanding voice cut through the murmurs, smooth and dangerous. "Elara." She froze, tray halfway to the table. The Alpha King, tall and impossibly imposing, stood at the far end of the hall, his dark eyes catching hers like a net pulling her in. A shiver ran down her spine, and she clenched her jaw, forcing a calm she didn't feel. "Yes, Alpha King," she replied softly, her tone carefully neutral. His gaze lingered longer than propriety allowed. There was curiosity there, yes, but also a subtle annoyance, as if he could sense there was more beneath her quiet servitude. "Be careful not to spill," he said, stepping closer. The slightest tilt of his head, a shadowed smirk, sent her pulse hammering. It would be unfortunate. She forced herself to smile politely, bowing just enough to show deference. Of course, Alpha. Even as she obeyed, a small flicker of satisfaction danced in her mind. He doesn't know. Not yet, and when he does. She pushed the thought aside, feeling the weight of the tray, feeling the fragile tension between herself and the man who could crush her with a word. Serving the pack was dangerous, yes, but hiding from him was more so. Every whispered conversation, every glance she stole from behind lowered lids carried the risk of discovery. Yet, in the quiet moments when he was not watching too closely, she allowed herself a fraction of pride. She was clever, she was stronger than she seemed, and the pack. None suspected the truth. The Alpha turned away abruptly, drawing the attention of others, and she exhaled quietly, barely noticing the trembling in her fingers. The hall was alive with power, with politics, with secrets, and she, a humble servant in their eyes, held one of the greatest of all. One day, Alpha King, he will see me for who I truly am. A flicker of anticipation curled in her chest, and a thread of unease. Because the closer she got to him, the harder it would be to stay hidden. The morning sun barely pierced the thick mist that clung to the training grounds outside the palace. Elara's fingers itched not from nerves, she was used to serving, but from the anticipation that something about today would change everything. She had learned long ago to read the Alpha's moods like the wind, sharp, commanding, and unpredictable. "Step forward." The Alpha King's voice rolled across the grounds like a storm. Elara froze mid-step, her heart tightening. He stood at the center, arms crossed, his broad shoulders tense, eyes dark as the forest shadows behind him. Wolves circled, restless, watching her every move, yet it was his gaze she felt like a physical weight pressing against her chest. "Yes, Alpha," she whispered, setting down the basket of herbs she had been carrying. "You will fetch the moonstone from the hollow cave tonight," he said, his voice low and deliberate, testing her, gauging, "and bring it back before the first howl. Fail, and the consequences will be yours." Elara's stomach nodded. The hollow cave was treacherous, known even among the bravest wolves for its sudden pitfalls and lurking predators. Yet her lips curved into a subtle, controlled smile. "It will be done, Alpha," she said. The Alpha studied her, a flicker of something curiosity, perhaps irritation. Crossing his face, "Do not overestimate yourself." Every word was a challenge, a gauntlet thrown at her feet, and though his warning could have made any ordinary servant tremble, Elara felt a spark of defiance. "If only he knew how strong I truly am." Later, as she moved through the misty forest, shadows dancing around her like whispers of the past, her wolf senses tingled. The path to the hollow cave was perilous, but she had trained in secret for years, honing her agility, her speed, her instincts. One misstep here, one slip in judgment, and the Alpha's test would become her doom. Yet even as her paws carried her over roots and jagged stones, a subtle thrill pulsed through her. This was more than a test, it was a dance. Every glance she imagined from the Alpha, Every thought of him watching her fueled her. He believed her fragile, he believed she was powerless. But power, like fire, often hides in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to blaze. When she reached the cave's edge, the moonstone gleamed faintly, a pale light reflected in her eyes. She knew the Alpha would expect hesitation, fear, but she would give him nothing but success. And yet, somewhere deep in the forest, she could feel him watching, sensing, questioning. The unspoken pull between them tightened, and a shiver of something more dangerous than frost slid down her spine. He doesn't know how close he is to discovering me. A low growl echoed behind her, reminding her that the forest was alive. And tonight, it would decide everything. The hollow cave yawned before her like a dark maw, the moonlight catching jagged edges of stone that seemed to leer in silence. Illyra's paws moved silently over the rocky path, her senses alert, every whisper of wind, every flicker of shadow pulling her attention in multiple directions. She had always been careful, too careful, some might say, but tonight the stakes were higher than ever. Her hand brushed the cool surface of the moonstone, and she could feel its faint pulse, almost like a heartbeat, syncing with her own. A thrill ran through her. Power, secrecy, possibility. She was alone, yet the forest was alive. Every rustle hinted at eyes she couldn't see, at truths that could unravel her life in an instant. Not everything hidden remains hidden. A voice drawled from the shadows. Illyra froze, the moonstone slipping slightly in her grip. She didn't need to see him to know who it was. Darien, one of the pack's ambitious warriors, had been watching her since she stepped into the palace. His smirk carried arrogance, cruelty, and a suspicion that chilled her blood. "Darien," she said smoothly, forcing a calm she didn't feel, "this is no place for wandering." "Or maybe it's exactly the place," he said, stepping closer, eyes glinting with dark amusement. "I've wondered what secrets you hide, servant. I think, tonight I'll find out." Her pulse quickened, a mix of fear and something sharper, anger, the instinct to strike. She could handle wolves, yes, but exposure would destroy everything she had built, everything. "I suggest you leave," she said, her voice low, almost a growl. "Or you might regret it." Darien laughed, a sound that grated against the silence of the forest. Bold words for someone who's so fragile. He lunged suddenly, grabbing at her arm. Illyra twisted, narrowly avoiding his grasp, and in that instant, a flicker of her wolf flared. Strength and speed bursting from her like a hidden fire. Darien stumbled back, eyes wide, momentarily shaken. "What?" Her gaze locked on his, unwavering. "Fragile," she whispered. "I think you underestimate me." Before he could recover, she vanished into the shadows, the moonstone clutched tightly against her chest. Her heart raced not from exertion alone, but from the dangerous thrill of near discovery. She had skirted exposure this time, but only by a fraction. One misstep, and the Alpha, or the pack, or both, would know her secret. As she sprinted back toward the forest edge, the moonlight dappled across her fur and human form, her mind whirling. "I cannot trust anyone, not yet, not even the Alpha, not fully, not until he sees the truth, and believes it." Somewhere behind her, Darien's furious growl faded into the distance, but the danger lingered. Secrets were a fragile thing, lies even more so, and hers. Her lie could cost her everything she had fought to protect. A shiver ran down her spine, equal parts fear and exhilaration. The forest seemed to hold its breath as she disappeared into the night, a shadow among shadows, a secret waiting to be revealed, and soon he will see the truth. Whether I am ready or not. Even as the forest swallowed her footsteps, the memory of the Alpha's eyes haunted her. Dark, commanding, and impossibly piercing. They had lingered on her longer than any lord or wolf had dared. And now, with Darien's threat lingering at the edges of her mind, every glance, every shadow, every flicker of movement made her pulse quicken. The pack hall was quieter than usual that evening, the air heavy with unspoken tension. Illyra moved between tables, arranging herbs and tending fires, careful to appear small and unassuming. Yet across the hall he watched. The Alpha King, seated with an imperious tilt of his shoulders, did not move. His eyes followed her, tracking every subtle gesture, every tremor of emotion she tried to hide. He shouldn't notice me like this, she thought, a blush threatening her composure, but he did, and with that realization came a thrill she could not deny. When her hand brushed against a silver bowl, spilling water onto the floor, he rose without a sound. The distance between them closed in an instant, the room shrinking around them. Careful, he said, his voice low, almost a growl, as his gaze bore into hers. You don't want to make mistakes that draw attention. Yes, Alpha, she murmured, bowing slightly, though her eyes refused to leave his, and then it happened. A brush of hands as he handed her the bowl to steady it. Just a fleeting touch, yet it sent a spark curling through her, as if her wolf had recognized a mate before her human heart dared to admit it. For a moment, silence stretched, the air thick with something unspoken. She dared a glance upward, meeting his eyes again, and there it was, that same unshakable tension, that quiet challenge, that invisible thread pulling them towards something forbidden. A servant cleared his throat nearby, breaking the charged moment, and the Alpha stepped back, but not entirely. His gaze lingered, a promise of attention she could not yet claim. Alara's chest fluttered, a mix of fear and longing she had buried for years. I must remain hidden, yet every moment near him burns like fire. She straightened, forcing her composure, and carried on with her duties, though her heart refused to settle. Every glance, every accidental touch, every shadowed movement between them felt like a conversation spoken in a language only wolves understood. As the night deepened and the torches flickered low, she caught him watching her from across the hall once more, and in that look, she saw both curiosity and warning. I cannot resist him forever, she thought, her pulse racing. And soon, he will make me choose. A distant howl from the forest reminded her that danger was never far, but tonight, the more pressing threat was the growing pull between them. A forbidden bond she could not yet name, yet could not ignore. The whispers started as faint rustlings, brushing against her ears like cold wind through the trees. At first, Alara ignored them, focusing on her worker, ranging the herbs, tending fires, ensuring the hall ran smoothly. But the looks grew sharper, sharper with every passing hour. Eyes lingered too long, questions hung in the air like suspended knives. Darian's words from the hollow cave echoed relentlessly in her mind. Not everything hidden remains hidden. She had survived his interference that night, but now the threat was multiplied. Wolves in the pack began exchanging subtle glances when she passed, their quiet murmurs thick with suspicion. Every gesture, every misstep, every borrowed glance from her Alpha now carried weight, as if her secret might slip out at any moment. Alara stiffened as she passed the central hall, catching a trio of young warriors watching her with barely concealed curiosity. Her heart hammered, and her wolf snarled low in warning. They are testing me, probing for weakness, and yet none dared confront her directly. Not yet. She allowed herself a controlled breath, forcing calm over the storm inside. One misstep, one careless action. They could unravel everything. Her thoughts wandered briefly to the Alpha, whose gaze she felt on her even when he was across the room. He had noticed, she knew. How could he not? The tension between them had grown impossible to ignore. But the pack's suspicion complicated everything. If they discovered her secret before him, everything she had worked for, everything she hoped to protect would crumble. Alara. A voice whispered from the corner of the hall. She turned sharply, and there was Darian again, leaning casually against a pillar, eyes dark with amusement. Darian, she said smoothly, masking the sudden spike of fear. I am busy. He smiled, slow and dangerous. Busy hiding, you mean? You can't keep everything secret forever. A shiver ran down her spine. He wasn't just a rival anymore. He was a threat to her carefully constructed world, and while her wolf burned to strike, she forced her human form to remain composed. The Alpha's shadow moved near, silent and commanding, his presence enough to make Darian straighten. The subtle shift in the room was instantaneous. Everyone instinctively recognized the Alpha's authority, even those who had begun to doubt her. Alara felt the tug of their unspoken bond, a lifeline in the storm of suspicion. His eyes met hers briefly, a flicker of warning, or perhaps a silent promise that he would notice, he would protect, if she survived long enough. The hall hummed with tension, and she realized the truth. It wasn't only the rivals or Darien she needed to worry about. The pack itself, the very foundation of her life here, was now a web of potential exposure. I cannot fail, not now, not ever, and yet a small, dangerous thrill flickered within her. Secrets were weapons, and sometimes the greatest danger brought the greatest opportunity. The moon hung low over the forest, casting silver light through skeletal branches, painting the ground in long, shifting shadows. Alara moved silently, every sense alert, her breath shallow but steady. The pack hall, the whispered suspicions, even Darien's threat, all of it faded under the primal pull of the night. Here, in the solitude of the woods, she could let her wolf stir, if only for a moment. A faint rustle of leaves made her pause, ears twitching, heart hammering in a rhythm that felt almost synchronous with something larger. Her wolf stirred beneath her skin, muscles coiling, senses flaring beyond human limits. She had trained herself to control it, to remain hidden, but tonight was different. Danger, longing, curiosity, they all burned together, and she could not deny the surge of power building inside her. A low growl tore through the quiet, and Alara's pulse spiked, not from fear, but from recognition. The Alpha emerged from the shadows, silent, commanding, like a shadow born of the moonlight itself. "Alara," he said, his voice deep, low, and resonant. It carried both warning and wonder, making her chest tighten. "I didn't hear you approach," she admitted, though her voice wavered more than she wanted. "Perhaps," he said, stepping closer, "some things are meant to be sensed, not heard." His gaze lingered on her in the dim glow, and for a heartbeat, the world shrank to just the two of them. Her wolf stirred restlessly, a thrill coiling in her chest. The forest seemed to recognize it, too. The pull between them, dangerous and inevitable, humming in the air. She tried to focus, to hide it, but when he reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face, heat flared through her body. "You're not just a servant," he murmured, eyes dark, unreadable. "There's more beneath the surface. I can feel it." Ilara's stomach fluttered, part fear, part exhilaration. "He senses me. He senses my wolf." She held his gaze, steadying herself, heart racing. "I do what is required," she said softly, choosing her words like armor. His lips curved slightly, as though amused by her attempt at restraint. "Required, yes, but I want. Truth." A shiver ran down her spine. Truth, dangerous, forbidden. Her wolf growled low, answering him, longing to leap, to reveal, to claim. She swallowed, forcing herself to step back, but the Alpha mirrored her, closing the space between them again, deliberate, silent. The forest held its breath as their eyes locked, a thread of tension humming between them. Every instinct screamed, every nerve vibrated. They were drawn together, unstoppable, yet restrained by the rules of a world that neither could fully ignore. Then, a snap of a branch in the darkness reminded them both that danger was never far. Ilara's pulse raced anew, and the Alpha's protective presence pressed against her like a second heartbeat. Soon, she thought, wolf and human entwined in anticipation, he will know the full truth, and when he does, nothing will be the same. The tension in the pack hall was nearly tangible, like a storm trapped beneath the high ceilings. Ilara moved through the room with careful composure, yet every whisper, every glance reminded her that she was no longer invisible. Darien's threat had faded, but now another shadow crept into her life, one she could not ignore. Cashin, a warrior from a neighboring pack, entered with the confidence of a man used to commanding attention. He carried himself like he owned the air, the floor, even the Alpha's watchful gaze. And though the pack murmured at his arrival, Ilara's attention was caught by his focus, by the way his eyes lingered on her with a mixture of desire and challenge. "You are far too clever to serve quietly," Cashin said, voice smooth, dangerous as he approached. "I've heard whispers about you, secrets tucked behind silken smiles, secrets that might interest me." Ilara's chest tightened. She did not flinch, though her mind raced. "I cannot let him discover anything. Not now, not ever. I am no one of interest to you," she said, keeping her tone light. though the tension in her hands betrayed her. Cashin's smirk deepened. Ah, but everyone in this pack seems to disagree. Even your Alpha seems curious. He glanced subtly toward the Alpha King, who stood at the far end of the hall, silent but undeniably present. Her pulse skipped. The unspoken connection between her and the Alpha had not gone unnoticed, and now, with Cashin's arrival, the fragile web of secrecy she had spun began to tremble. You may underestimate me, she warned carefully, letting just enough edge slip into her voice to assert control. Cashin leaned closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. Perhaps, or perhaps you simply underestimate what I am willing to do. Every word he spoke was a threat wrapped in charm. Every movement was designed to provoke, to unsettle her, to stake a claim she could not afford to acknowledge, and yet a part of her wolf bristled with exhilaration. Danger is intoxicating, if only it weren't so lethal. Her eyes flicked to the Alpha, whose presence was a silent anchor in the storm. He watched her with that same unreadable expression, protective, curious, undeniably aware of every subtle shift in the room. She felt the pull between them tighten, a tether she could neither resist nor fully claim. Cashin's gaze sharpened and the tension between them crackled like static. Whispers surged through the pack, eyes followed, noting every hesitation, every glance, every flicker of recognition. The delicate balance she had maintained for so long now wavered dangerously. Allura's wolf growled low, warning her that the threat was more than human, or wool, if only it was tied up in the heart of the Alpha's attention. One misstep, one slip of her mask, and the pack, Cashin, or even the Alpha could unravel her carefully hidden truth. And yet, as Cashin smirked, leaning closer and brushing against the edge of her sleeve, she realized the danger wasn't only from outsiders. The greatest peril was the pull she could not resist. I cannot falter, I cannot fall, not yet, but deep in her chest, a spark of something forbidden had already ignited, and the night was far from over. The full moon hung high, silver light spilling across the pack grounds and illuminating every shadow. Allura moved cautiously through the courtyard, the moonstone still secured against her chest. Her wolf stirred restlessly beneath her skin, a low hum of tension vibrating through her. She had survived rivals, suspicion, and threats, but tonight nothing would remain hidden. You shouldn't have come alone. The Alpha's voice cut through the stillness, dark and commanding, and she froze. He stepped from the shadows, every inch the predator, every movement precise, unyielding. His eyes were fixed on her, and for the first time, there was no mistaking the intensity there, not curiosity, not irritation, but something deeper, sharper. Recognition, Allura swallowed, heart hammering. I thought I could handle it. She admitted, though her voice trembled despite her control. You've lied to me, he said, stepping closer, the moonlight casting his features in stark relief. All this time, who you truly are. Her chest tightened, the weight of the secret threatening to crush her. She tried to pull the moonstone closer, hiding it instinctively, but the Alpha's hand shot out, brushing her wrist. The touch was firm, commanding, stopping her in place. Why? He demanded, voice low, dangerous, yet threaded with something she couldn't name. Anger, disappointment, desire. Allura's lips parted, struggling to find words. I couldn't risk it, not with the pack, not with you. Her confession trembled in the cold night air. I had to be invisible. I had to protect myself. For a heartbeat, silence stretched between them, broken only by the wind rustling the leaves and the distant howl of the forest wolves. Then the Alpha's eyes softened, not fully, but enough to make her chest ache. You thought hiding would keep you safe, he murmured, his voice almost tender now, but secrets, they never stay buried, and neither do feelings. Her wolf bristled in response, a surge of power echoing through her. She had feared this moment, yet it was intoxicating, vulnerable, terrifying. The Alpha stepped closer, their bodies just inches apart. You are mine, he said quietly, each word carrying the weight of authority, destiny, and an unspoken promise. Your lies, your fears, they do not change that. Allura's breath hitched. She began, but words failed. The weight of truth, the pull of his presence, the undeniable bond threading between them left her speechless. A sudden noise, Darian's shadow moving near the edge of the grounds reminded her that danger had not vanished, but the Alpha's hand on her arm was steady, protective, claiming. In that instant, nothing else mattered. Her secret had been revealed, her life had changed forever, and for the first time, she felt the thrilling, terrifying freedom of being truly seen. He knows me, and now there is no turning back. The full moon cast a cold, silver glow across the pack hall, illuminating every face and every whispered suspicion. Elara moved carefully through the room, her pulse quickening with each step. Though the Alpha now knew her secret, that knowledge did not erase the pack's lingering doubts, nor Darian's scheming. "You've made a mistake bringing her here," Cashin murmured from across the hall, leaning casually against a pillar, eyes glittering with malice. "She is dangerous, untrustworthy, and she hides more than you realize, Alpha." Elara's stomach tightened, a coil of fear and fury winding around her ribs. Her wolf growled low, warning her, while her human mind raced. She had survived threats before, but now the Alpha himself was being pulled into their web of deception. "I see nothing but truth in her." The Alpha's voice cut through the murmurs, calm but sharp, "and that is enough for me." Cashin's smirk faltered slightly, but his eyes burned with quiet determination. "And what about the pack?" he challenged. "They do not know who she truly is, or what she is capable of. Can you stand against them when suspicion spreads?" The Alpha's jaw tightened, but he did not waver. "Let them doubt, I will protect what is mine." Elara's chest tightened at his words, a mixture of relief and fear surging within her. His claim had been made, but the pack's whispers were relentless, each one a thread threatening to unravel her carefully constructed life. She had fought to survive, to hide, to protect herself, and now the very people she had served were being used as weapons against her. From the shadows, Darian stepped forward, voice smooth, venomous. "She nearly cost the pack everything already. Secrets, lies. You know you cannot trust her fully." The Alpha's gaze sharpened, locking on Darian, and Elara felt the surge of his power ripple through the room. Protective, dominant, dangerous, yet even under his watchful eyes, the sting of betrayal lanced through her heart. It was not his fault. Cashin and Darian had planted seeds, whispers, doubt, fear. Her pulse raced as she met the Alpha's eyes, and in that gaze she found the tether that kept her anchored. His hand brushed her subtly, a silent reassurance that he believed in her, despite the pack's murmurs. But the wolf inside her growled in warning. Trust could not erase suspicion, and loyalty could not prevent treachery. One wrong move, one whispered accusation, and everything could crumble. Elara's heart hammered, equal parts fear and exhilaration. "I survived before. I will survive now, and I will not let them destroy what is mine, or what belongs to him." Outside, the forest whispered under the silver moonlight, shadows moving like silent witnesses. The pack may have doubted her, but she would prove her strength, and she would make sure that no one, not rival, not spy, not traitor, would ever threaten her or the Alpha again. They will learn the hard way. I am no longer invisible. The pack hall was alive with murmurs, the air thick with anticipation and unease. Elara moved carefully, every step measured, yet even as whispers swirled around her, she felt the magnetic pull of the Alpha's presence. He stood at the center, every inch of him radiating dominance and unspoken power, eyes fixed unwaveringly on her. "Elara." His voice cut through the room, deep and commanding, silencing the murmurs as if the walls themselves obeyed him. "Step forward." Her pulse thundered, and she moved, careful not to stumble. Every eye in the hall followed, every breath held, yet the fear that usually gripped her was tempered by a strange, exhilarating certainty. She was not alone, not anymore. She began, but the Alpha's gaze held her in place, halting the words before they could falter. "You are mine," he said, low and resonant, and the hall seemed to shiver at the weight of the declaration. Every whisper died, replaced by stunned silence. All of this, the secrets, the lies, the threat, change nothing. "You are my mate, my fated, and the pack will know it." A shock rippled through the crowd. Murmurs rose and fell like waves, but the Alpha's presence was absolute. He stepped closer, and when his hand brushed hers, it was more than touch. It was claim, protection, and promise. Alara's chest fluttered with a mix of fear and exhilaration. She had hidden for so long, survived so many threats, avoided exposure. But now, with his claim, the chains of secrecy and doubt began to shatter. Her wolf surged, heart pounding in resonance with his, a rhythm older than words, deeper than fear. "Do you accept me?" The alpha's voice was softer now, threaded with an intensity that made her knees weaken. Alara swallowed, emotions whirling, and nodded. Yes, she whispered, voice barely audible, but enough for him to hear. Enough for the pack to see. A ripple of surprise spread through the hall, but the alpha did not waver. He moved to stand beside her, protective and unyielding. Enemies, rivals, and doubters alike seemed to shrink in the presence of their bond, powerless against the truth written in the alpha's claim. Her heart raced, wild and untamed, as relief and longing collided. The danger of exposure, the tension of suspicion, and the shadow of rivals were eclipsed by the undeniable certainty between them. She was seen, claimed, and, most importantly, safe at least for now. And as the alpha drew her close, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face, she felt the fierce, unspoken promise in his gaze. No one could touch her, no one could threaten them, not while he stood there. The forest outside whispered under the full moon, but in the hall there was only the sound of their hearts, in sync at last, unbroken and unafraid. I am his, and he is mine, nothing else matters. The dawn broke over the pack grounds in a blaze of gold and silver, the light spilling across dew, kissed grass and flickering on the stone of the hall. Alara breathed it in, the crisp air filling her lungs with freedom she had never known. She moved with a grace unburdened by fear, the weight of secrecy finally lifted. The pack had gathered, whispers hushed as they watched her step forward, not as a servant, not as a shadow, but as herself. Her wolf surged beneath her skin, a wave of power and pride that she no longer had to hide. The alpha's presence beside her was steady, unwavering, a tether that anchored her even as her spirit soared. "You have nothing to fear," he murmured, his hand brushing hers, warm and grounding. "The pack sees who you truly are, and they accept it." Alara's chest fluttered, tears threatening to spill. Years of hiding, of fearing discovery, of keeping her strength concealed. All of it dissolved under the light of acceptance. She lifted her head, meeting the eyes of her pack. Some still stared with awe, some with lingering doubt, but all understood one truth now. She was not only powerful, she was theirs, and he had claimed her. A low, reverent growl rumbled from her wolf as she raised her arms slightly, letting the forest air wrap around her. The pack members stepped back instinctively, sensing the quiet dominance and strength she had long concealed. She was no longer fragile, she was no longer hidden. The alpha's hand found hers again, thumb brushing across her knuckles. His eyes held her in a gaze that promised protection, passion, and permanence. "You've embraced yourself," he said softly, "and that is the bravest thing of all." Alara's lips curved into a small, triumphant smile. "I've been hiding for too long." She whispered, the words a confession and a release, no more. A ripple of murmurs moved through the hall, but the pack did not challenge her. Instead, they bowed subtly, a gesture of acknowledgement, of respect for the one who had fought to survive and now stood fully revealed. The alpha drew her close, and for the first time, Alara allowed herself to lean into him completely. His arms wrapped around her, firm and protective, a shield against the past and the dangers yet to come. Her wolf purred, heart sinking with his in a rhythm of shared strength and unspoken devotion. Outside, the forest shimmered under the rising sun, the shadows of yesterday's fears receding. For the first time, she felt the thrill of power unrestrained, the warmth of love unhidden, the joy of being seen for exactly who she was. "I am yours," she whispered, voice soft but unshakable. "And I am yours," he replied, lips brushing her temple in a quiet, binding promise. The chains of secrecy, doubt, and fear lay shattered at their feet. Together, they faced the future, fierce, unyielding, and unbreakable. This is only the beginning, but we face it together, and nothing will ever hold us back again. The full moon rose high over the pack grounds, spilling silver light across the forest and glinting on the dew-kissed grass. Illyra stood beside the Alpha, the world around them hushed as if holding its breath in reverence. The pack gathered at the edges, a respectful circle witnessing the bond that had been tested, threatened, and now affirmed. Her hand rested in his, fingers entwined, pulse syncing with his steady heartbeat. For the first time, she felt completely whole, her secrets revealed, her power embraced, and her place by his side undeniable. Every fear, every whisper of doubt had fallen away like shadows chased by the sun. The Alpha's gaze swept across the pack, firm and commanding. "This is my mate," he declared, voice resonant and unyielding, not by circumstance, not by duty, but by fate. "She is mine, and I am hers. Let all who watch know our bond is eternal." A wave of awe passed through the pack. Wolves shifted, low growls of respect echoing in the still night. Rivals and doubters alike fell silent, recognizing the truth that radiated from them. Nothing could sever what was meant to be. Illyra's wolf stirred beneath her skin, a soft hum of satisfaction and pride. She tilted her head, letting the cool moonlight wash over her, feeling every pulse of life in the forest, in the pack, and in the Alpha who stood unwaveringly by her side. "You've come far," the Alpha murmured, drawing her closer, lips brushing her temple in a tender, grounding promise. "And we face the future together, always, I." She breathed, her voice a mixture of awe and joy. "I am yours, forever." He captured her hand fully, raising it slightly as if sealing an unspoken covenant. The moonlight bathed them both in silver radiance, marking not just a claim, but a destiny fulfilled. Their eyes met, speaking in a language beyond words, trust, devotion, and an unbreakable bond that had survived secrets, betrayal, and danger. The forest whispered around them, and for a moment, time seemed to pause. Everything that had come before, the deception, the fear, the forbidden glances, was now transformed into strength, passion, and unity. Together, they were unstoppable. Illyra rested her head against the Alpha's chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heart, and in that simple, profound moment, she understood fully. This was more than love. It was fate, power, and trust intertwined, a bond that nothing in the world could undo. The pack stood in respectful silence, shadows softened by the moonlight, as the Alpha and Illyra shared a quiet, victorious embrace. "Our destiny is sealed. Together we face everything, and nothing will ever break us."